Welcome to another episode of Mr. Long Island's Search for Truth and Beauty. My name is Michael Watt, aka Mr. Long Island, and our guest this afternoon is Helen Crossan from the Cold Spring Harbor Library and Environmental Center. Very important to get that in there. Helen, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And as you know, Mr. Long Island's Search for Truth and Beauty, we look for opportunities to talk about issues that Long Island needs to discuss that keeps Long Island vital and sustainable. Mm-hmm. And we're also looking for beauty. Long Island's an absolutely wonderful place to live, work, and raise a family. And there's a lot of beautiful things about it. And we feel that there's just not enough talk about the things that make Long Island great. So we're always looking for issues to talk about that really need to be discussed so that we can maintain what it is about Long Island that makes it so special. And you fit in both categories. So Helen, we're really grateful to have you here today. But before we get started, as always, we discuss pizza. Oh. And the reason why we discuss pizza is because as diverse as Long Island is, you got 126 different school districts, 15 different towns, 3 cities, blah, blah, blah. Each and every town and village on Long Island has its own pizza place. Each and every Long Islander has a strong opinion about pizza. So what we've done, we've gone on a little mission here, and we will find out the best places to get pizza on Long Island. And our criteria is, if you had friends coming in from out of town and you really wanted to impress them with the pizza they can get here on Long Island, where would you take them? Well,
I grew up in New Hyde Park. And in New Hyde Park, everyone goes to Umberto's on Jericho Turnpike.
Okay.
And so that would be the spot.
Okay, so Umberto's, I think a lot of people have heard of Umberto's. There's a few different Umberto's around.
There's a few different Umberto's, but I believe the one in New Hyde Park was one of the very first.
One of the first, and then you have, there's one in Plainview also, I believe, right? And there's a couple more?
Yes.
All right, so thank you very much for that. We'll add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
And I think it's on New Hyde Park Road or?
Jericho Turnpike.
Jericho Turnpike, okay. So let's talk about the Cold Spring Harbor Library and Environmental Center.
Correct.
And I have to share with you, and I think we have in the past, to me, first of all, it's one of the best kept secrets on Long Island, despite your best efforts, and we're going to work on that.
That may be why I'm here.
Well, that's part of the reason why you're here. It's certainly not by design. It's really a reflection of the fact that people on the South Shore don't know enough about the North Shore, and people on the North Shore don't know enough about the South Shore, which is why we have this program. The location is spectacular. I would venture to say one of the best views on Long Island that you can get just by pulling up into the parking lot is your front porch. Tell us a little bit about the history of how the library came to be where it is, and a little bit of history about the library, and also just elaborate a little bit on your role in all of that.
Okay. Well, I started as the director of the Cold Spring Harbor Library in February 1999.
Okay.
And we opened the library that you're so enamored of with that beautiful view in August 2006. So between 99 and 06, the building the library was renting became unavailable to us. Our landlord said...
Is that a different location?
Different location,
okay.
Completely different location. Our landlord said, we need the space for other reasons. We want you to leave.
Okay.
And since I just started as director a few months earlier, I said, okay, where are we going to go? And I told the board that I would not be the captain of the ship going down.
Okay.
Seemed appropriate slogan. It's Cold Spring Harbor after all. And that I would just simply find another location. So the location you're talking about is what was discovered. Of course, acquiring the land, building the library was a multi-year process.
Well, let me jump in. The location is on...
It's in the Cold Spring Harbor State Park.
Right
on 25A.
Right on Main Street,
right
going through
Dwight
the western
Street,
side of Main Street.
Western side of Main Street in Cold Spring Harbor. From the front porch of the library, you can see all the way across to Stamford, Connecticut.
Beautiful. There you go. My sister lives in Stamford, so wave to her next time
wave.
you're there. Okay.
Exactly. Many people, of course, boat from Connecticut or from the North Shore to Connecticut, back and forth, and many people have come up the driveway from the marina and said, I've been wondering what this building is. Oh, it's a library.
It's that impressive a building.
Exactly.
So. All right, so I interrupted, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But back in 2000,
back
1999.
In 2000,
right.
So I became the director who was losing the building. And of course, a building is necessary to have books and to have a collection and to have services.
Otherwise, your arms get really tired because you stand and hold them all day.
I wondered whether we would end up in a bookmobile in the village parking lot in Cold Spring Harbor. That didn't happen.
No.
And it didn't happen for lots and lots of reasons.
Okay.
And one of the reasons was an incredible board of trustees who was willing to trust their new director, that she had a vision of what could be the public library for Cold Spring Harbor. And one of the things I did right away after we lost our lease was start a library foundation.
Okay.
And we realized very quickly that in order to fund a new library, we were going to need to raise capital. So beyond a bond issue, we started this library foundation that raised lots of money, that created this magnificent building that so many people love to visit.
Okay.
When we did dozens of community visioning sessions around the community in people's homes, over at the laboratory, people
When you
hosted.
said the laboratories, right? Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. Okay.
Yes. So all of these parents, friends, residents of the community from Lloyd Neck to Laurel Hollow hosted events in their home, and we would ask them, well, what do you want your library to look like? What do you want your library to do for you? And we kept listening and listening and listening. We created these really cute little T-shirts for children, and we had a pretty slogan, imagine your library. And we would give out Sharpie markers and say, draw a picture. And we would see children around town, at school, wearing these shirts, imagine your library, with pictures on it. And what that campaign did was shift the responsibility or the ownership from the administration, from myself, to the community. After all, I live in Oyster Bay. I have a library.
Okay.
This is the library for Cold Spring Harbor. What do you want it to be? So we could call it a listening tour if you wanted to. And that went on for a couple of years. And over time, the Library Foundation was very successful in raising millions of dollars to offset the expense of building the library. But to this day, people walk in the door and they say, you were listening. This is what I asked for. So what is that? They wanted the library to be an extension of their home. They wanted it to be a place where you come and you stay and you linger and you meet your neighbors and your friends. And the most joyful moments of my day is when I'm wandering around and I sit down in the reading room in front of the fireplace in one of those pretty leather chairs, chatting with someone, and somebody else comes in the door. And I'll look at the person I'm sitting to and I say, oh, there's Robert. Do you know him? And they'll say, oh, no, I don't. Oh, let me introduce you. And the next thing you know, you've got a gathering of people for which I'm the common denominator. And they all live in the community. And that shifts the expectations and role of the library tremendously.
Now, the desire to make an extension of people's homes, it looks like an old Victorian home.
Yes.
So that was by design.
Yes, the library is actually modeled after a home in the community that is on the National Register of Historic Places. That house was built in about 1898.
The house it was modeled after.
Yes.
The building the library's in.
The building is brand new.
Brand new,
We
and that
moved
was
in August '06.
Okay. And that was part of the state park property, if I recall.
It is in the Cold Spring Harbor State Park.
Okay.
Yes.
You touched on something that's really important, and I want to use it as a segue to talk about the community conversations. One, it's really part and parcel of the role a library plays in the community, especially now you hear, well, why do we need a library? You have the internet.
Yes.
And you're right, you do get that feeling that you're visiting someone's house, someone's very well-kept house, well-read house.
Yes.
But there is that feeling that you're visiting.
Yes.
But I want to get back to reaching out to the community.
Yes.
And finding out what they want. And, you know, it goes back really, if you think about it, revolutionary times, the American Revolution, the seeds were planted in the taverns when the people would get together and over a pint of beer would discuss their frustrations with the King of England. You kind of rejuvenated or revisited that. Tell us a little bit about the thought process and the benefits of having those little meetings in people's homes and really how important that was to the success of it.
You know, people need to have a stake. You know, it felt like, you know, losing your building, the library losing its lease, that fear of they were moving into Cold Spring Harbor with this fabulous school district, but there would be no public library for their children. You know, so there was a lot of anxiety around that moment. And I am the kind of person who loves to do her job in the community. Of course, I have to spend time in my office, but I'm trying to minimize that during business days, certainly. And I like to be in the community listening to what people are interested in. So when we informed the community that we lost our lease, people came into the office to me and said, don't worry, we'll find something else. It's okay. You know, I had someone in the neighborhood where the library was come to me and say, well, I'm on 2.5 acres. I don't need all of it. I'm sure I could just give you the acre in the back if you
Wow.
could use it.
Wow.
It turned out to be an acre of land where it was a migratory bird path, so we couldn't.
Okay.
But that was the kind of groundswell there was around losing the library. So it became, because we're talking about 1999, 2000, the internet is well established, and the whole information revolution is really booming. You know, it's pre-app, it's pre-iPhone, but everybody's aware that the internet is where you're going. So what is the role for the library? And everybody was very keenly aware, well, at this turning point, at the turn of the 21st century, what should my library be? And what people asked for over and over and over was for a gathering space.
Okay.
Yes, they wanted books, but that reading room with the pretty chairs in front of the fireplace, they wanted that reading room to be visible to the front door.
Okay.
So that they could sit there and enjoy material, but glance up to see who comes through the door and be part of community. I had a gentleman who said to me that because I listened to him and I put this reading room in proximity, visible sight line to the front door, he was going to help pay for the library. He was going to
Wow.
write a check to the capital campaign.
Very nice.
Because I was listening. Of course, it was a very collaborative process. I have a 9-member board. We had an architect, we had engineers, we had the entire smorgasbord of planning that was involved. So relaying all of these wants and desires and turning them into something that was affordable and realistic and could be what you see 7 years later as this comfortably, well-appointed, you know, easy to use, accessible space. You know, you're taking all these ideas and you're applying them to drafting panels and boards and saying, well, what does this actually look like and how does this actually flow and function? And one of the challenges, of course, with a library is flexibility. Like you said, well-read people must come here. There's, you know, rows and rows and rows of bookcases. Well, bookcases don't generally move, do they? So how do you design a facility that's meant for something sort of anchored,
Right.
yet make it people-centered? And so my demand to make this a people-centered library shifted the architect's viewpoint entirely.
Okay.
Because typically a library is designed around the collection.
Right.
And I said to the architect, no, this library will not be designed around the collection. It's going to be designed around what the community wants, about how people use space. And so one of the first things people love about this library, besides the beautiful reading room and the view, is the fact that I have electrical outlets in all the tables.
Okay.
Everybody comes in with a device. Juice, you need the juice. You
right.
need to plug in. And you don't have to go scrambling around looking behind the walls of something. We put the juice right in the tables.
Wow.
Wireless everywhere, juice right in the tables. People come, people stay.
Now, okay, so you opened it. It's been open 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that the bond is still as strong?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have literally thousands of people walking through the door every month. And that demand, that interest is tremendous. Library card holders, you know, how many people have a library card? Literally 80%, 90% of my community has a library card.
Wow.
You know, almost 100% of the student population already has a library card. We did a campaign last year. Superintendent and I said, well, we better make sure everybody has a library card. So we did a quick survey. Yes, they all have library
Beautiful.
cards.
So there's the sustainability.
Yes.
And the thing that fascinates me, and is just not enough of it on Long Island, is reaching out to the people and getting their feedback
Yes.
before
Yes.
the fact.
I had people accuse me of not doing my job because I was asking them what
Right.
they wanted their library to look like.
Well, we're not used to that on Long Island. We're used to being told, this is what we're going to put here, and you're going to like it.
Right. Which is why when somebody comes through the door today and they do that, this is what I wanted. I said, yes, you were listening. Yes, I was listening.
Well, the lesson to be learned, and I've done some work with a group called Destination Long Island. I'm sure you're familiar with them.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do, they're developers of downtown areas, but they reach out to the public first
Yes.
and say, what do you want with your downtown? Let us know, and whatever we can make work, we're going to make work.
Yes.
And the buy-in is tremendous.
Yes.
Do you see that ever becoming commonplace on Long Island? Because you don't want to spoil these people, you know.
Well, I would like to think that collaboration and cooperation are key to success. And that's the way I conduct myself professionally. Those are my key. I mean, to be a connector, to be a collaborator is what makes, my day a success. And I think that as there are more and more challenges with the suburban model and the sustainability of the suburban model, more and more of our elected leadership, more and more of the bureaucracy of the government structures on Long Island will, I hate to say, be forced
Right.
to be more collaborative, better listeners, because our economic model is in jeopardy if we don't start paying
100%.
more attention.
That's right. And the interesting part of that is there's another part of that equation, and we're going to use that into a segue to talk about something you host called Community Conversations. It's incumbent upon the community to get involved.
Yes.
Now, you host something called Community Conversations. We attended one the other night. We had a panel of young people. Surprised I wasn't asked to be on it, but that's okay. I'm kidding.
Next time.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. In all seriousness, you had a panel of young people talking about the challenges, which we're all familiar with.
Yes.
But to hear from the young people, and the one woman, the young lady, is a senior in high school, very
Yes.
bright, tremendous future, share with us she really has no intention of staying on Long Island.
That's right.
And then there was some feedback from the audience. So before we get into that, let's talk, though, about the importance of having the community come together, like we talked about with the Revolution and going to the tavern. Is the library the modern-day tavern? And what can we do to get people more engaged, get them out of their comfortable dens, and have them come down to the library and engage in a conversation that's going to help improve things?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I'm a librarian at all is that I've always felt that a populace without access to information, a democracy without access to information is doomed. Democracy is only surviving when the populace has access to information, as James Madison said, and I've just bumbled that quote, but you understand what I'm trying to say. And that motivation is what brought me to librarianship. Because I always felt that libraries are one of those places where it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Doesn't matter what color of your skin. They are neutral, apolitical institutions for everyone. You think about the model of the Queens or the Brooklyn or the New York Public Library System as being the place where new immigrants flock to learn English and learn how to find that first job. That perpetual model of the library being the neutral, apolitical location in a community makes it an ideal location to have a conversation on really political, divisive issues.
Right.
Because these are political divisive issues when you talk about the sustainability of the suburbs. And the motivation for community conversations to occur in public libraries. And this program you attended Wednesday was the fourth in a series.
Okay.
It was the first one to be held in Cold Spring Harbor. The three previous programs were held in 3 other libraries in the town of Huntington. The town of Huntington Libraries, the town of Huntington itself, the Townwide Chamber of Commerce, the League of Women Voters, the Leadership Huntington Foundation, all those organizations are partners and sponsors of the community conversations. Why? Because Helen doesn't like to do anything by herself.
Right.
I mean, that's just, I look for partners and collaborators. The concept was originally mine, but I was no way I was interested in doing it on my own. I look around my world and I say, well, who else do I think might be interested in this? And I really felt that the sustainability of the suburbs were at a tipping point in our sustainability, and this conversation needed to be had. So we start with the town of Huntington. We start with all those partners. We bring in experts to talk about, well, how did we start out as a suburb? Why do we have 126 jurisdictions? How did that happen? Then who actually lives here? Do we really know? We all have a perception of who our neighbors are about the Long Island demographics, but how accurate are they? And then the next program in the series was all about education. And we had a tremendous panel, including Tom Rogers, who heads up BOCES, on the panel, talking about education and the infrastructure of education and its sustainability. And then the program you attended Wednesday night, it became so important. Each program was talking about some hot button issues, and one of those hottest issues was housing.
Right.
So we had to bring in children, we had to bring in the young adult and say, what are your thoughts? What are your prospects? Are you going to stay here? Are you going to flee? If you're going to flee, why are you going to flee? And so Dr. Rogers Wednesday night did an incredible job tweezing out of each of the students on that panel what their hopes and dreams are, and whether those hopes and dreams can be fulfilled on Long Island, or whether they really feel they need to go off someplace else to do that.
Well, so just to kind of, we'll wrap up with this. There's three components. One, you need a facility. You need that gathering spot. Two, you need engaged people.
Yes.
You need people that are abreast of the issues and are informed. And then you need to have conversations. And I think that's what's so great about your program. And then the other bonus one is the partnerships. You know, too much is done in a silo on Long Island. You know, people are, we're not going to really reach out to other organizations, get them involved, and get people talking to each other, because there's a tremendous amount of power when people sit at a table or in a forum and discuss things. And we had a great interchange of ideas at the event where an older fellow was like, well, you don't have fire in the belly. And they were like, well, we do. But, you know, you guys keep putting the fire out. And it's,
and his perception is that this young group of millennials are just whiners. I mean, he actually called them whiners. And I wondered if somebody suggested he come and throw that question at us, because we wanted to have this hot bucket button conversation. And that's not true. He read about the program and he decided to show up, because obviously he has this fire in his belly himself about this millennial generation being a group of whiners. Well, he was quickly taught, he was quickly schooled that he was entitled to his perception, but in the reality, we had a panel there that are by far not a whiner in the bunch.
But it was important for that panel to understand that that man's opinion is not alone. There's a lot of people who see that, especially on Long Island. And when you start harping about housing, well, that's, you know, and I love it, God bless, when the older folks are saying, well, you know, I came out and I bought a house, and you bought a house for 18 grand. You know, now you're trying to sell it to this person here for $450,000, and the taxes are a tenth of what you paid for the house. So there needs to be a meeting of the minds. I think the community conversations is terrific. I love that library. I love the fact that the location's phenomenal. But you touched on, I didn't realize why I loved it so much until you mentioned it. You just feel like you're visiting somebody's house. And I think you do a great job for your community, do a great job for Long Island, and I want to thank you for being here today. This is great stuff. Hopefully we'll inspire more people to have more conversations and more partnerships. And thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for your time. That's another episode of Mr. Long Island Searches for Truth and Beauty. My name is Michael Watt, a.k.a. Mr. Long Island, and we found a lot of truth and a lot of beauty today. So thank you very much, Helen. Thank you for watching.